see it later. Okay. Welcome to our 2023 Spring Guest Speaker Series. And we have Omaha Public Schools and also CLTA, that's Chinese Language Teacher Association, small interest group K-12, supporting us, co-sponsoring this series. And we are very happy and we are honored actually to invite Tom Welch to host this webinar, to give this webinar. And the topics looking ahead, new year and new possibilities for world language. So Tom is, I have to say, a very, very friendly person. He is actually a friend of my advisor, Dr. Muller. When I was introduced to Tom always helps me, you know, he's very friendly. Even when I was a grad student, he greeted me. So I'm very grateful, Tom. Thank you for coming to our guest series and present to us. Thank you. And
sure.
Now, also Tom has experience in the as French teacher in the classroom, experience as principal and experience working as state supervisor for world language in Kentucky State. Am I right? Yeah. And yeah. He sees different aspects of education and world language education, I mean, and he has great ideas to share today. And he is going to talk about Phil, competency-based credit, and also Chat GPT today, how to use the three things to really improve our language classroom, language program, and even district. Yeah, Tom, now please take it on.
Okay, well, hello everybody. It's really nice to be with you this afternoon. I hope you won't accuse me of pandering too much because I've worn my red pullover today in honor of being with Nebraska teachers. I don't know if you had the chance to read in the introduction, but I actually am a Nebraska native. I grew up in Grand Island and graduated, went all the way through Grand Island Public Schools and graduated from Grand Island Senior High a long time ago. It seems very recently, but it was actually quite a while ago. I don't get back very often, but I was back in late September, early October, and really enjoyed being back on the plains. I spent most of my professional career in Kentucky. As Crystal said, I was a French teacher, and then I worked at the the Kentucky Department of Education as the World Languages Supervisor. Then I had the opportunity to open up a brand new public high school as the founding principal, and I insisted that we do something very different. This maybe will give you an idea of how I'm kind of one of those out-of-the-box thinkers. But I said, you know, it's my firm belief that the most important thing that happens in a school is what happens in the classroom between teachers and their students. And so I want learning to be at the heart of our new school. I want everybody to see themselves as a learner and somebody who helps cause learning. So I said, for that reason, myself and my two assistant principals will all teach one class every day in a block schedule. So that's what I did for the entire time I was principal. I ended up teaching a lot of different things, but you know, I have a real fond place in my heart for foreign language teaching and world languages in general. And as Crystal mentioned, I was part of a group called the National Council of State Supervisors for Languages, and I've continued my membership and my very active participation with that group through the decades, which has helped me to where I am now with the opportunity to really get some new ideas and to work with those. So that's just a little bit of background about me. I've lived in Chicago now for the last 10 years, but still feel like a Kentuckian for basketball and a Nebraska fan when it comes to football. But if you wouldn't mind, since there's just a few of us this afternoon, I'd really like to hear quick from, or maybe you could put it in the chat, your name and where you are in Nebraska and what your current responsibility is, whether you're teaching and which you're teaching if you are, or if you're supervising, or just what level you happen to be. That'll give me a chance to really tailor things. Spend just a few minutes with that because then I want to jump in. And Crystal, you said we're starting at 3:30. What time are folks expecting us to be done this afternoon? 4:30 or 4:45? Don't want to be sure.
We're normally an hour and a half.
Okay. All right. Good. Good. So it's at 5 then. All right. If you would drop your name and your assignment. Okay. There's Spanish in Geneva, Fillmore Central. Great. South Sioux City. Spanish. Okay. We got several others that I love. Robin at Omaha South. Okay. Spanish teacher. I had a very good friend we taught in Omaha. Oh, I don't know her married name though. Danya in Guangzhou. I don't know. Schmidt maybe was her last name. Wayne. My sister had relatives in Wayne. Spanish. Anybody else who hasn't had a chance to put in yet where they are or what their assignment is? So it looks like all Spanish teachers could be correct, and we may have others coming along to join us. So I know else has their camera on. It actually, I'm a very visual person. If there's any way you can, I would love for you to turn your camera on just so I can feel like I'm making better connections. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just talking in the void. Oh, good. There's Michelle. She's brave enough to put her camera on. Thank you. Anybody else going to join us? Oh, teachers. I don't know if you recognize my background. I had the opportunity, hey, Krista, I had the opportunity a year ago in December to have one of the things checked off of my bucket list. And so I was able to do a balloon ascension at sunrise just outside of Mexico City at Teotihuacan, the ruins just outside. It was incredible, but that's what I've got on my background today. Robin's in a room.
But Tom, we cannot hear you now.
All right, listen,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
going to mute my phone and see if you can just keep going this way. I'm going to have to shut that off.
Okay.
Excuse me, it's, technical things all the time here. All right. Somebody else say something so I know whether I'm hearing through the computer. Crystal, can you say something?
Yeah, we can
Okay.
hear you. Yeah.
We'll try it and hope it works like this. I've got the phone as a backup if not. All right. Well, let's just jump right in. Let me share my screen. I usually have very elaborate sessions that I do, but I've radically changed the way I do things. And so I've gone very plain this time. And we're just going to see if this will go like this. All right. Can you see my screen all right?
Yes.
All right. So please stop me anytime. Email me anytime, twelchky@gmail.com. As Crystal said, I think of myself as a friendly guy. I'm very happy to answer questions individually now or later. So let me tell you a little bit about what we're doing today. I have 3 guiding principles that I've finally gotten to over the years, and these apply to any situation for me. The first of all is absolute respect for the individual learner. Second, transparency of expectations. And third, never putting a learner in a situation where they are not ready to succeed. Let me tell you how that first one works out today. I know that each of you teachers is in a different place, in a different situation. You have different backgrounds. And I feel like it would be extremely presumptuous of me to say, okay, here's what we're going to do at the end of the hour and a half, and you're going to be able to do these things. Because you each one are coming to this with a different sense of familiarity, not only of these 3 topics, but everything else. I want you to know that this afternoon, what I look at as my responsibility is to help each of you individually take just your next step when it comes to the things that we're going to be talking about. Some of you may be ready to run very quickly with 1 or 2 or all 3 of these ideas. Some of you today, it's like, listen, I've got I've got somebody in the background, the kids are in the background doing this, and I can't really concentrate. The only thing I want to do is just get a general idea of what's going on. That's okay as well. I respect you as an individual and where you are. Just like when I taught French, there was not a single class of kids on the first day of French 1 or in your Spanish classes on Spanish 1 who were at the same place. Already, first day, first year, they're at different places for a number of reasons. Secondly, transparency of expectations. Today, I just want to help you understand these 3 concepts. They're probably pretty new. But maybe you know more about them. But my expectation is just to familiarize you with them. And then finally, never put a learner into a position where they're not ready to succeed. I'm not going to ask you to do anything or to comment that's not something that you're ready to do. I may push you just a little, like I will with the Jamboard in a minute, but I never want to put somebody into a situation where they're not ready to succeed. If you have any question about those 3, do those make sense to you?
Yeah.
It honestly took me a long time in my career to finally boil these down, but they really have helped a lot for me. All right. So 3 main areas that we're going to talk about today. First is competency-based credits. And if you are familiar with competency-based credits or have used those, would you just put something real quick in the chat, either to me personally or with the group? The second thing I want to talk about is facilitated interdependent language learning. This is a wild concept, folks, but very exciting. And the third thing is something you've probably heard about, but I don't know if you've had any chance to really experiment with it or not, and that's ChatGPT, which just was introduced into the market in mid-November or something, and already has really been causing a lot of ripple effects as people think about the implications for it. So any questions or comments? I only can see a few of you at any one time because Since I'm sharing screen, you're just on the side. So it's really going to be difficult for me to have you stop me unless you, unmute yourself and go ahead and say, Tom, wait, I was wondering about what you said. Don't worry about doing that. We're going to take it at the pace we need to this afternoon. But I promise by the end of the session, you're going to see some things and experiment with some things that I hope will be very exciting. Okay. All right. Let's, have you used a Jamboard before? I'm going to switch out of here. If you could go to this link on Google, you should be able to get in there. I'm going to stop this screen share and I'm going to share my Jamboard in just a moment, and we'll poke around in there for a bit. You'll see what I mean by working in a Jamboard. I'm going to pull that up. I feel like the Wizard of Oz sometimes, who's saying, pay no attention to that man behind the screen. I'll share screen once again and share my Jamboard. So, can you see that all right? Give me a thumbs up or some sort of indication that you're able to see the Jamboard. And I see several of you now coming in there. Good, good. I got introduced to Jamboards, I don't know, in the last year or 18 months or something, and have found them to be extremely valuable and helpful in a situation like this. Maybe you've used them in class. I think for a classroom teacher, they could be really valuable, especially since after the pandemic, so many places have a one-to-one situation where your kids have access to the same things. So here's a quick thing that I'd like for you to do. And if I'd really like everybody to participate on this. For this first page, which is competency-based credits, if you come over here to the side and press on the sticky notes, that opens up this sort of a situation, and you can say, I really have never heard of competency-based credits, CBC. And then it's going to come in like that, and then you can put it over here. So I'd like to find out, and you can resize it.
Tom, it's view access only now.
It says to me, oh, all right. Okay, now everybody should have editor rights. I will admit I get tripped up oftentimes by Google with this. Can you get in there now to actually work in?
After refresh the page and I can get in. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, refresh the page and you should be able to come back in. And I'm going to take mine out of there to make room for yours. Good. See, this is where I get to be really good with wait time, right? And to be honest, I'm really happy if you don't know anything about it. Very good question. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to move into the second column if you're really unfamiliar with the concept at all, which is obviously very understandable. All right, brand new. Yes, some really good questions. This is really good too, because if you want me to follow up with you individually afterwards via email for any of these questions, I'm really very happy to do that. I'll wait about another minute, and then I'm going to kind of explain to you. I'll give you a 10,000-foot overview about it. I'll stop sharing my screen at that time. All right, you can keep this open and keep adding to it, even though I'm going to stop the screen share. And so I'm back here now, right? Yes, Robin had a really good comment too. Robin, were you ever successful in being able to post anything on the Jamboard?
No, in the chat. Yeah, I don't know why I'd refreshed it and everything. But I tried to sum up. I tried to hit everything. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, good. Well, let me tell you briefly then about it. I'm going to screen share again just for this next little part so that we can talk about what it is. So this is annoying as we go back and forth, but okay. So basically, competency-based education says, if you know what your goals are for a course, Spanish 1, German 3, it doesn't matter. If you know what your goals are for a course, then as soon as a learner demonstrates that they know and understand those concepts, they can get a credit. Now, when I was a principal in Kentucky, we started experimenting with this because I said, you know, I can't figure out why every kid, being different, should need to be in the same class for the same amount of time to learn things. So we started experimenting with this. And there are ways to experiment with this without doing it for the whole class or for a whole course. But let me know in the chat, is this a concept that makes sense, that a kid should be able to move on as soon as they've demonstrated their understanding, but shouldn't be pushed on if they're not there yet? It's, for me, it was kind of one of those, well, duh sorts of things. I know as a language teacher, I always felt bad that, especially between second year and third year, you would oftentimes lose a lot of kids. And a lot of them, it was because they hadn't been real successful those first 2 years. So they were like, I'm not ready to move on. I'm not going to put myself into that sort of situation. And what we discovered was that if you had transparency of expectations and you took upon yourself the responsibility to say to a learner, listen, as soon as you're ready to move on, you can move on. But I'm never going to penalize you for mistakes. I'm never, I know this sounds strange, I'm never going to discourage you from making mistakes in language learning, because the more mistakes you learn, the more you're going to be, the more mistakes you make, the more you're going to be learning. I've made more mistakes in another language than any of my kids ever did, right? But it was because I was progressing. But it's, how do we figure out how to do that? And it's very, I would say it's nigh on impossible in a traditional class where we're going unit by unit, chapter by chapter. But there are ways to begin to experiment with this. But first of all, I just want you to know that in Nebraska, this is possible. And it's this next, this is from your Nebraska regs. It's Title 92, Chapter 10. Crystal can give you the information about it, but schools may use performance-based curriculum or courses as an option in place of any subjects in the course code if they have a written description of the curricular course, which includes goals, representative instructional experiences, et cetera, et cetera. You can read the rest of that to yourself. Wow. Wow. How would you do that, right? And I will tell you, remember I said, don't ever put a learner into a situation where they're not ready to succeed. It would be irresponsible of anybody to say, oh, I think all the Nebraska language teachers should switch to competency-based credentialing because you've not had any experience with it yet. But can you think of some ways that you could do this on a small scale that would make it possible for learners to, and for you, to be introduced to the concept?
Hi.
I thought I heard somebody start to peep up. Oh my goodness, I see one of my old high school friends, Pat Branson. Is that really you, Pat?
Yes, indeed.
Oh, it is. Great, great. Patty and I went to high school together and worked together on a reunion. I won't say which reunion we were working on, Pat. Let me give you an example of if this concept is at all intriguing to you. Here might be one way to start. If you are working in a particular chapter with one class, I'm not even saying do this for every class. Take one class where you know you've got some kids who probably could handle this, and you say to them, listen, kids, we're going to do what's called, what is it, FedEx time, that I'm going to state what my expectations are. I'm going to make those very clear for this chapter or this unit. And I'm going to let you work at your pace. Now, if you want to work with me in class, that's fine. But if you want to work ahead, it's, you know, you've been with me long enough to know what the unit test is going to be like or the chapter test is going to be like. If you can demonstrate to me that you have mastered the concepts for this chapter or this unit ahead of time, then you know what? I'll give you that time to yourself to work on something else. Maybe it's another Spanish topic that you're interested in personally. Maybe it's, you know, I don't care if you work on another course, but as long as you're not behind with me, as long as you've demonstrated to me what you know what our stated goals and expectations were for this chapter or this unit, then that's okay. I have a daughter who's a special ed teacher, and she did this with her classes in elementary school. And she would say, okay, kids, here's the expectations for the week in whatever subject it was. If you can demonstrate to me before then that you know that, then I'll give you that time to yourself to work on something else that's approved. She said it was amazing. She said, you know, it put an end to the homework stuff. And she said the other advantage was I was able to spend more time with those kids who didn't understand because the other ones were already done. I hope that's not too confusing to you. I'm trying to condense a lot of complex ideas in a very quick way. I think I'm gonna mute Elsa here. I think that's maybe her, or maybe Crystal, I think Elsa's mic is on and she's got some other things going on. So in a nutshell, and you'll see why this is important to the rest of our discussion today, competency-based credentialing means that as soon as a kid has demonstrated that they know and can do what you expect in the course, you can give them the credit. If you've already got this set up with the school and the board. And that's once again where Crystal can be a help to you. And here's what you need. Let's see, I've got to go back and do my back and forth with the screen share. So this is what you need to get started with that. You need your course description. Yeah, you need your course description complete with the outcomes. You need the course code, and Crystal has been working on that for a course code in world languages that is competency-based. And then the final thing you need is approval either from your school council if you're set up that way, and or the board in your state. Let's take a moment there and let me have your feedback about that concept. This can be really powerful. And as I mentioned, you don't need to think about doing this for a whole course all at once. You can do it for a unit or a chapter to experiment with it and give some of your kids time to experiment with it. It also means that if you have a heritage language speaker, think about the implications there. Because those heritage speakers don't need to come in at the beginning of a sequence. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have a responsibility to see that they have the skills they needed across the board. And we know many kids come in very advanced in their speaking skills, but their literacy or their writing can lag behind. That doesn't let us off the hook for helping them learn those things. But, there's most of them would oftentimes be able to come in at an earlier level, and you can give them that credit because if you have in place the structures needed for competency base. But there's, 45 or 46 states in the country now that do this, but that have it on the books in state statute, but very few schools are doing this. Another thing that people ask is, okay, a kid finishes Spanish 2 in the end of January, what do I do with them now, right? Well, there's ways to handle that because once again, I would say the most important thing is that relationship between you as the teacher and the learner. And you just say, hey, Krista, that's great. You finished Spanish 2. Here it is, the 18th of January. Hey, tomorrow you're going to just continue your Spanish studies. You know what's required for level 3. You come in every day just like you did, but now you're going to be working on Spanish 3 things instead of Spanish 2. There are 1,000 different ways to vary this and structure this, but don't start out with a full course at once. That would be putting you into a situation where you're not ready to be successful. Because as teachers, the only thing most of us have been trained to do is whole group instruction, right? And this is the opposite of whole group instruction. But at the high school where I was principal, we got rid of the Carnegie unit and went fully to competency-based. So there was no kid who had to spend a year in Algebra 2 if they could demonstrate and pass the end of course assessment that every kid had to pass. By the same token, there was no kid who flunked Algebra 2 because at the end of the year, they hadn't mastered the concepts. We figured out ways to just keep working with that kid until they were able to know what they needed to know. Right, Pat, you're right. The good kids, there's no reason for them to get bored. You say, hey, you want to get your 3 credits or 4 credits of language in 2 years or 3 years? Go for it. Then you've got room in your schedule for other things. I care about you as a learner. I can help make that happen for you. And Maria, you were talking about in OPS, the board needs to approve that first. Yep. All of these things, I would never underestimate the importance of things like that. For the competency-based credit to be able to get that on the transcript, you have to have all these ducks in a row. But you can start now by doing this on a very small scale. That's not a full course. Do what's right for you, right? That's Tom's rule number 1, absolute respect for the learner. Nobody in this call is ready to institute, or at least I don't think so. Probably nobody is ready to go to a competency-based credentialing. It took us 4 years to get there as a faculty. And we did it very slowly. And you know what? At the end, we still had some teachers who weren't ready to do it. And you know what I said as principal? I didn't say, by gosh, you're going to do it. I said, you know what? My responsibility as your principal is to help you get ready to take your next steps. I'm not concerned that the teacher next to you is already doing it. And you begin to have that sense of trust. And that's exactly what you want your learners to feel with you, that you're not trying to ding them, you're not trying to catch them. Your only goal is that they become more and more successful as language learners. All right. Any other questions real quick in the chat before we move on to Phil, which you'll see how this coordinates with competency-based. Let me see if I can go back and read this one in the chat right now. Is this not? Oh, I can't tell who put that in. Maybe it was Maria who put that in the conversation in the chat right now. I do it sporadically. It's not an easy way to teach. No, this is the most challenging. This isn't teaching. This isn't teaching. This is causing learning. And those are 2 very different things. And that's a really fundamental concept, the difference between teaching and causing learning. Teaching is what the teacher does for the class, and you expect the kids to measure up to your ideas. Causing learning is where you say to each learner, hey, where you are is where you are. You are not behind in this class. You are where you are, and I will help you take your next step. Yeah, I love that at the end. The best thing I saw was that students were forced to ask questions to facilitate their learning. Yeah. You've probably all been in professional development where they talked about differentiated instruction. I've told people from the very first time I heard the concept, I think differentiated instruction was born in the pits of hell. It puts all of the responsibility on the teacher because it's differentiated instruction. I am 100% believer in differentiated learning. totally different. And that's what we're going to talk about now with Phil. So any other concepts about competency-based? I want to switch real quick then. So if you go back to the Jamboard, let's go back to the Jamboard for a moment. And that'll give you a chance maybe to catch your breath about competency-based and also to add in anything you need to there. How to add to transcripts. All of these are great questions. And they are questions that are from you as individuals that other people may not be interested in. So there's my dog in the background. If you want to write your question or your comment to me in an email, I will be very happy to take care of that for you. Let's go to the next one, though. This is Phil. You can keep working in this Jamboard as I stop my sharing. Sorry about my dog. He's taught me more about housing learning than anybody, but he is a bit excited right now. Just one moment. Sorry about that. It's reality. All right, so Phil is a brand new concept. It stands for Facilitated Interdependent Language Learning. I first heard about this when I was in touch with a teacher from California at a charter school, and he had written on the ACTFL communications board, he'd said something like, I'm looking for speakers of, and he named about 7 different languages to work, who could converse with my students. And after some back and forth, we realized that what he was doing was he had a class of, think about this, he had a class of 25 kids who were learning 15 different languages during the same period of the day that he was overseeing. And the only language he spoke other than English was Spanish. Think about that for a minute. How do you do that? Any responses over there in the chat, or feel free to unmute and comment? Let me look on the Jamboard and see if, teacher certification needed? Good question. We also discovered some teachers in Wisconsin who are basically doing the same thing. One of them has been doing this for 10 years. She has classes, usually one a day in her schedule as a Spanish teacher, and it's for facilitated language learning. We call it interdependent because it's not independent. Independent's all right. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this is interdependent because as a language teacher who knows how to help people learn a language, she was equipped to help them learn even if she wasn't teaching them. Does that seem counterintuitive?
So I wonder about resources like that. Do the students have like online resources to do that, and then they work on their own pace, and the teacher is just facilitating and monitoring that?
Here again, Maria, the exciting thing is going back to that first rule of respect for the individual learner. So you figure out, how does this learner learn best? Some kids like a course, right? They want to work through a course. They want to do it on their own. So you have a course, a student maybe at your school who wants to learn Korean because they're interested in K-pop. And you find out that UNO has a Korean course and the kid could enroll virtually or whatever in that, or the materials are online through Coursera or an open resource course. But some of my colleagues and I decided that we wanted to know what this was like. So I decided about a month ago to learn Italian. Right? Now, I'm not I know this may sound funny, but I'm not a gifted linguist. I don't necessarily pick up languages easily. So I thought it would be really good for me to learn Italian to figure out what resources are available. How do I go about doing this? How do I structure it? What we are doing is leaning on the can-do statements, the lingua folio, which are structured according to proficiency levels, so that we have a good idea about, oh, here are what we can set as targets. And I say we, my colleagues and I are all doing this independently. We're doing different resources, going at different paces, everything. But we've all, we've all been using the can-do statements as our overarching architecture for our learning, which will also help if I were a teacher looking to do competency-based credentialing. I could be, I could help a learner say, hey, Dr. Muller's research showed us that one of the most important thing was learner goal setting, right? And these become very individualized. But the really remarkable thing, Maria, now is that the resources are so plentiful for however a student learns. Just a minute again, let me see. It's about Duke's dinner time, so he's starting to get a little more anxious. Duke? Oh, I thought I was going to be able to introduce him to you. So once again, it's transparency of expectations. So as a learner, I'm setting for myself goals based on the can-do statements that are appropriate for the proficiency level where I'm at as a learner. Because it would be totally defeating to me to have a goal that was set way above where I am for reading or listening or any of the four different skills, if you want to call them that.
So
Yeah, now
how would you do the evaluation? Because yes, you set the goals, but for example, for interpersonal, I mean, if one of my students wants to learn Chinese, there is no way I can evaluate my student myself.
Right. So there we have more and more options opening up all the time. One is, I'm going to show you in a few minutes. Let me go shut the door to my room.
And actually, we can use Apple test, STEM test, and those because they are proficiency tests, and so they can actually be used to evaluate.
So then at this point, you're using an external evaluation tool.
Yeah, or we can, as a district, or in Minnesota, actually, they have a state. They work with, their Department of Education actually work with our testing company that established the system. So the state owned the test assessment.
Does the state pay for the testing or the district does?
It depends on how the relationship was established. Oh, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. But there are a variety of ways now, one of which is depending on the rest of the community, because you can find other people. in the language community, for instance, who would be willing to help give your students feedback. The other thing that I would say would be an idea is to look at what you've set as the expectations in your other courses and say, you know, here's the sorts of things that I expect you to know and be able to do. And it's obviously it's going to be easier if you take, for instance, Romance languages and they want to add another Romance language. So I certainly understand the difficulties and don't underestimate the challenge when it comes to something like Spanish and Chinese. But Crystal's just put up there, oh yeah, about the stamp test. There are a variety of different ways that you could work with assessment. But once again, the most important thing would be to be totally transparent with the learner about here's what I expect. To begin with, you may do it just based on something as artificial as time, right? I expect to be able to see that you've logged this many hours in Duolingo or whatever. I don't advocate that, but I'm saying as the very first starting point to give you some experience about what how you're going to construct things. But I really want to move on. So Phil could also work in a single language class. Here's one thing that I faced oftentimes as a French teacher. Get ready for French 4, and you oftentimes are faced with a singleton class in the schedule. Now, you all are, maybe all of you are Spanish teachers, I'm not sure. So it's probably not as common for you, but especially if you're talking about a language other than Spanish, oftentimes you'll have a teacher who ends up without a full schedule because, French 3 or French 4 or German 4 doesn't have enough kids to make. The administrator can't justify a class period at that expense. But if you go back to this earlier idea of absolute respect for the learner, and that the most important thing is the relationship between the learner and the teacher, then you can say, hey, Tom, I know I don't have enough kids for a German 3 class this year. You know what? The most important thing is the kids are working with me. I'll work with the kids on that individual basis. And this isn't trying to teach 30 different kids, right? This is helping 30 different kids learn how to take their next step, helping transfer the responsibility for the learning onto the learner. And you say, listen, I want some of those German 3 kids in with the German 1s, and I want those German 1 kids to be listening to the kids working and seeing them working in German 3 or Spanish or Chinese, it doesn't matter. So there's lots of different ways to work with the concept of Phil. I will, as a follow-up, give you the link to, there's not a lot of slides in it, but I did a learning session. I no longer like to do presentations. I did a learning session with this at ACTFL in the fall, and you could take a look there. I also can give you the link, or maybe Crystal has already put it in the notes, to the article that we published in the Journal for the Center for Applied Linguistics about Phil and the concept. But it's not a model, it's an approach. It can work with 20 languages in a classroom. It can work with 1 language in the classroom. But what's absolutely essential is that the teacher does not enter the situation thinking they have to teach the class. They have to cause learning to occur for each learner in the language. But that doesn't mean, for instance, if you have kids from multiple levels all in the same classroom of Spanish, you are not trying to teach a split class of Spanish 2, 3, and 4 if you're in a small school, maybe. I would never, as an administrator, and certainly as a foreign language teacher, would never advocate having a teacher teach multiple levels in the same classroom. I would advocate for having a variety of the learning points for each student in the same classroom, but that's very different. I'm going to stop. Am I making any sense at all? Somebody had their hand up, or at least, or maybe that's my little hand that's there. Sorry. No? All right. Thank you, Crystal, for putting the article in. The last thing, I want to shift gears. I want to really blow your minds now. Go back to the Jamboard for a minute and let me know what you know about ChatGPT. It's been in the news for the last 12 weeks. That's it. It's new, but I'd like to know if you know anything about it. And remember, if you don't, that's not a problem at all. We're educators. We're in the business of curing ignorance, right? And there's nothing wrong with ignorance. Ignorance is curable. Because in a minute or two, I'm going to share a quick video with you about language learning and ChatGPT. Have any of you worked at all with ChatGPT? Let me show you something real quick. You know, I told you I'm learning Italian. And I've tried to be careful not to say I'm trying to learn Italian. I may not be an advanced learner yet, but every day I'm doing a little more and I am learning Italian. Let's see, I have so many things open on my dashboard here. Yeah, so I'm going to share the video with them first, Crystal. I will warn you, it's a 9-minute video, but you're going to want to pay attention, I believe, because it's like nothing you've ever seen. You should be able to see this. I may have to pause it for how Google or YouTube puts in these ads, but yeah, you should be able to see this. This should provide for a lot of conversation. Oh, sorry, I always listen to things at a faster playback speed so it doesn't take me as long. I'll put this back on normal speed, and now we'll try. And we have to add the ads. That is not Duke. Okay. Sorry, I thought I had it queued from them. Up. Okay. It looks like we don't have any audio on the video. And Crystal, I can't remember with Zoom, is that something that I have to control or that you are in control of?
You are the host now, so you can control.
Okay. Oh, who remembers quickly, who can chime in here and say, here's where you record that, or here's where you have that. Let's see.
Start a new share, and then you should be able to click audio in the bottom left-hand corner.
Thank you. That's the wisdom of the crowd. New share, audio, down here. I'm sorry, where is that?
It should have shown up when you clicked new share. You should have had a Zoom box appear.
Okay,
Where
let's
it-
try it again. Share sound, that's the one I was looking for. Okay, folks, sorry about that. Now, let me know in the chat if you can hear.
And ideas for you and
I'll back it up and we'll start.
ChatGPT is about to kill traditional language learning, and this is going to change the way that students and teachers learn languages forever. Now, this might sound crazy, but ChatGPT is a revolutionary language model and basically an AI super assistant that's gone viral and gained over 1 million users in less than a week. It can write original stories and ideas for you and respond to your questions and statements as if you were talking to a real person. And it can do this because it was trained by a group called OpenAI on billions of public text data on the internet. It's almost as if you had a friend that sat down and read every article or discussion about Spanish on the internet and was ready to give you a best guess answer at any question that you had about the language. ChatGPT basically makes it possible for you to have a pretty good Spanish or German language teacher in your pocket 24 hours a day, ready to quiz you, teach you concepts, correct your mistakes, and talk to you in and about the language whenever you want. This is going to change a lot. But here are 12 things you can try yourself today to see why you'll never learn languages the same ever again. As a language learner, one of the first challenges you face is how do you find interesting, natural, and useful conversation material to learn how the language is actually used in everyday conversation? A lot of the material you find online might be about some topic you're not interested in, is too easy or too advanced, too formal or too informal, or actually has a bunch of grammar and spelling mistakes that'll teach you bad habits in the language. With ChatGPT, you can now generate natural conversations for any topic at any level that you're interested in. Here's a prompt I tried the other day. I wrote, write a back and forth dialogue between two people in Spanish about the best moments in World Cup history for a student at an intermediate level, B2. And I watched in amazement as it wrote a pretty solid back and forth conversation in Spanish about some of the best World Cup moments. I even tried asking it to continue the conversation and use more subjunctive, and it brought in some pretty awesome phrases in the subjunctive tense. You could continue going down the rabbit hole and ask it to do things like be more formal or be more informal, and it'll give you different results too. Now, reading conversations is important, but so is listening to the spoken language to get a sense of how it sounds and learn about its rhythms, intonations, and stress patterns to help you pronounce words and phrases correctly. ChatGPT can help here too. If you repeat what we tried in the first example to generate natural conversation, you can take this conversation to a screen reader and have an AI read the dialogue for you in a natural Spanish voice. There's tons of tools for this, but a free one is Speechify. You could ask ChatGPT to write this dialogue without the person labels and English translations, and then copy the text into Speechify, select the Spanish voice, and listen to the conversation played back to you.
¿Qué piensas de la Copa del Mundo de Fútbol?
You could even take this a step further by asking ChatGPT to write this dialogue but remove all the responses from person 2, and then play back the audio just from person 1 while you read from the script for person 2 to create an interactive dialogue. Another great thing ChatGPT excels at is its ability to explain language concepts in a clear and concise way. For example, let's say you're struggling to understand the Spanish subjunctive tense. I simply ask ChatGPT, I'm an intermediate Spanish student, B1, explain the subjunctive tense to me with plenty of examples. And it gave me a solid and thorough explanation, complete with examples to help me practice and learn the concept. Not only does this make learning a language more efficient, but it also allows you to tailor your learning experience to your specific needs and interests. Whether you're a beginner trying to get a handle on basic grammar, review ser and estar, or you have no idea what the pretérito pluscuamperfecto is, just ask ChatGPT and it'll explain it to you in as much detail as you'd like. You can always continue saying, give me more details or simplify this more to get to the right level for you. But it doesn't stop there. ChatGPT can even help you create a personalized study plan to take your language skills to the next level and give you a sample daily routine you can follow. Here's an example. You can input your current level, your goals, and how much time you have to study, and ChatGPT will generate a customized study plan just for you. I told ChatGPT, I'm an intermediate Spanish student, B1. Create a study plan for me that includes the concepts I should master to get to the next level with examples and a sample daily routine I can follow for this study plan. And it recommended specific concepts for me to learn, gave me some examples, and then gave me a routine I could follow to act on the study plan. You can have it adjust your routine by saying things like, make this daily routine work for 1 hour of Spanish per day. And it'll go ahead and revise the plan for you based on your availability. Once you use ChatGPT to learn all this material, you'll want to have some way to test your knowledge. Well, ChatGPT can help there too. It can actually create language quizzes for you to test your knowledge and improve your skills on any topic. I told ChatGPT, I'm an intermediate Spanish student, B1. Create a short passage with a multiple choice reading comprehension quiz for me to improve at the subjunctive tense. And it generated a quiz with multiple choice questions and even explanations for the correct answers all around the topic of the subjunctive. Not only does this make it much easier to practice your language skills, but it also saves you time from having to create or find these quizzes yourself. And because ChatGPT is powered by advanced machine learning models, it can adapt to your specific learning needs and provide personalized quiz questions and explanations as you modify your prompt. ChatGPT also excels when it comes to the problem of finding a language exchange text partner. You can have natural conversations with it in the language you're learning, and it'll respond back to you in a similar level of formality and difficulty as you give it. I told ChatGPT, let's have a back and forth conversation in Spanish at an advanced level, C2, about Lord of the Rings. You start. And we were off chatting about one of the best movie trilogies of all time, and practicing Spanish along the way. This is like having a language exchange partner right at your fingertips, available to practice with you anytime you want. You could even take this a step further and ask the AI to correct your mistakes as you go through the conversation. I gave it another prompt and said, let's have a back and forth conversation about the World Cup in Spanish at an advanced level, C2, and every time I make a grammatical mistake, tell me what mistake I made and how to fix it. You start. And it did a pretty solid job at helping me fix my mistakes. Just imagine how useful this will be to practice specific grammar concepts or vocabulary, or just have a natural conversation about any topic that you're interested in. It's a great way of getting more comfortable to use a language without any pressure. And this will help you build your confidence that you can ultimately take out to use in the real world. How many times have people told you you should be watching shows,
Me llama America,
reading books, listening to music in Spanish, and you have no idea what content to consume? Well, I asked ChatGPT to give me books, series, movies, and music in my level in Spanish that I could use to practice. And it nailed it with some good recs that I can comfortably consume at my level and use to get better at Spanish, while using content on topics that I actually like and won't get bored of. Now, these next 4 are some great quick hacks you're gonna wanna try right now. As a language learner, it's natural and expected that you're going to be making mistakes as you practice the language. But sometimes it can be difficult to know exactly what that mistake is or how to fix it reliably. That's where ChatGPT comes in again. You can input a phrase, sentence, paragraph, or whole text that you're unsure about, and ChatGPT can help you identify mistakes and teach you how to correct them. Here's a prompt I gave it. What are all the Spanish grammar, spelling, and punctuation mistakes in this paragraph? And it did just that in seconds. So if you're, say, having trouble with the verb conjugation in Spanish, you can input a sentence with the verb in question in ChatGPT and ask it to help you figure out the correct conjugation or if you got it right. Another quick language hack you can use ChatGPT for is making your sentences more natural.
Sí, Pablo, enséñale un poco de español a Sam.
Have you ever been texting someone and felt like your Spanish is too robotic, awkward, or too formal? Well, I asked ChatGPT to tell me how to make this sentence more natural in Spanish, and it gave me a lot of good examples I could use. You could even say something like, make this more natural for texting, and it would change the formality for you so you could send it to a friend or whoever you're talking to. Another fascinating thing about ChatGPT is that you can use it to learn vocabulary from the most simple to the most complex about any topic. I remember that one thing I used to struggle with in Spanish was finding vocab about getting a haircut. So I asked ChatGPT to teach me advanced Spanish vocabulary, C1, for getting a haircut. And in seconds, we had a good list to start with. So this might be useful if you want to generate vocab for track and field, interviewing, science, or any other topic. Now, as you learn new words, a common struggle in Spanish is that there might be 15 different ways to say it, depending on the Spanish-speaking country that you're in. Our AI assistant can help you figure out different ways to say something depending on the exact place you're going to. For example, the word bus changes quite a bit in different Spanish-speaking countries. So I asked the model to list the most widely used form in each Spanish-speaking country for bus. And it gave me a solid list to start with. So if I was heading to Argentina, I could keep the word colectivo in mind. This one will be super useful, especially for beginners. If you come across a passage in your target language that you want to understand, but it's too complex, you can give it your best interpretation, but then ask ChatGPT to simplify it for you to see if you understood it right. I gave ChatGPT this text and asked it to simplify this to a B2 Spanish level. And it hit me with a much simpler version I could use to test my understanding and see how close I was to getting the actual meaning of the text. Language learning is definitely going to change radically now that we have this super assistant in our pockets. But human interaction will always be the key and remains the irreplaceable part of language that we all crave. And technology is not replacing that. In fact, it's enhancing it. Check out this video where I explored how technology will bring humans even closer together for language learning in virtual reality. See you there, and hasta la próxima.
Well, I would love to get some reactions. Yeah, homework is a really interesting concept. We probably could have a whole thing about how do you make sure that ChatGPT is not, that a student isn't cheating themselves of their learning via ChatGPT. It's a legitimate question. A lot of people are having to face that. And I know that a lot of school districts already have banned the use of ChatGPT from any of the district computers or anything. Yeah, that's also an issue to deal with. Let me share with you a prompt that I put in the other day, and then I'll show you how to do this same thing. I told you I was learning Italian, so I wanted to see what it would do with a prompt that I gave it to write a story for me that I could try to read. After 3 or 4 weeks, I don't have a lot of vocabulary, and certainly the vocabulary is not personalized. So I said to it, write a story in Italian for an adult speaker of English and French who's just beginning to learn Italian. Make the story in the fantasy genre and include dragons. And this is what it did for me. And then I'm going to show you something else. I went to, well, here, let me show you what you can do then. If you copy this and go to Google Translate, a little bit, I've got all these other things on my screen, so. All right, and so this is going to change this to Italian. And then I'm going to put the Italian text in there, and it will tell me in English what that was. And then
C'era una volta una principessa di nome Isabella che viveva nel regno di Fieracavalli. Era un luogo magico, popolato da draghi che volavano nel cielo e dai loro cavalieri. Isabella amava i draghi, e ogni mattina si svegliava con un desiderio di volare. Così un giorno, quando i draghi stavano volando alto nel cielo, Isabella decise di unirsi a loro. Isabella salì sulla schiena di un drago rosso. Il drago le parlò nella lingua antica del regno e Isabella capì ogni parola. Il drago disse: "Vieni, Isabella, e vola con me." Isabella non esitò e insieme volarono in alto. più in alto di quanto avrebbe mai pensato possibile. Mentre volava, Isabella vide un mondo di Meg.
Reactions? Thoughts? Implications for you as language teachers? Somebody put in with the concerns on the Jamboard about the demands on the teacher. Students get individualized learning support, which might not be possible for their teachers with a full workload. To me, that's the beauty of this. I think teachers ought to do what teachers do best, which is forge relationships with learners that help cause learning to occur for them on an individual basis. I am absolutely an advocate of everything that clears the plate for the teacher to be able to do that. And I think ChatGPT offers some real opportunities. We have just a few minutes left. And what I'd really like to do is, and once again, the problem with a webinar where you're trying to be interactive is that, you know, it's hard. You guys have much more experience after the pandemic doing this than I do. But does it make sense that these three things all can be working together? That competency-based credentialing, which depends upon the individual setting their goals, achieving those goals, and then getting the reward for it, combines with Phil, facilitated interdependent language learning, where now you could help students learn a variety of different languages based on what they want to do and the rate at which they want to do it. And then finally, all of this being able to be powered through something like ChatGPT, where, you know, Maria was worried about finding the resources. Where am I going to find something for a kid who likes dragons that's in Italian? Well, you know, not only could I put that in to do a search for it at the level that the learner already is in their language development, but they could also write it as well. It says I have new messages. Yeah, and there are, as Angie has pointed out, there are some things developing now so that you can tell if something is generated by AI. And ChatGPT is a brand right now. There will be other companies that are coming out with other things. Microsoft, I saw today, is laying off 17,000 people, and they're going to be focusing now on AI, because I think they, just like Google, think what this is going to do to Google search, right? So you can bet that Google is going to be coming out with the Google version of ChatGPT. So as soon as people move to find something that will be an answer that will be able to tell that something was done with ChatGPT, somebody's going to come out with something else. So the important thing is to drop back to the guiding principles, and that is like, you know, hey, now I can spend more time with my kids individually, especially if they're doing it in a language that I know, to be able to tell whether they've just been cheating on the homework assignment. You know, the idea of anymore giving essays to write to a kid, the only ones who are going to see any legitimacy in that is teachers who don't understand that their kids are going to be doing it in ChatGPT or the equivalent. But if you now say, hey, listen, we're going to start having conversations now. We're going to have performance assessments. right? Or you're going to write in class based on a prompt of your choice. And then, you know, you like football, you've had the chance to read about football. Okay, now I'll have you do a writing assignment here in class, maybe longhand if you can read it. Anyway, yeah, Pat, language teaching is definitely changing. And I loved what I did as a language teacher, but it was always changing already when I was in the classroom. When I look ahead, those who aren't going to be ready to adapt to change, who just want to stay in their classroom and teach their way through a textbook, for one thing, you know, as a parent, as a grandparent, I look at what's possible in language learning today in 2023, and I'm like, I don't want my grandson in his French 2 class working through, you know, chapter 7 in January. I want him able to learn in the way that's best for him. Yeah, Pat. There was once a general from the Army who was retiring about 10 years ago, General Shinseki, who said, if you don't like change, you're going to like obsolescence even less. Now take your mics off for a minute and give me some feedback. We've got about 5 minutes left.
I want to personally thank you. I had a lot of anxiety about Chat GPT, and you have completely changed my perspective on it. I see all the wonderful possibilities that can happen now. And yeah, I mean, there's going to be the ways around it, but I love that now they have this practice all the time at their resources. And so thank you very much.
Angie, I'm not naive. I know that with every good thing, a negative comes to balance it out, but it doesn't mean we can stop things from moving ahead. We just, you know, it's more important that we teach our kids how to be responsible learners, responsible lifelong learners, rather than just kids who are trying to get a grade. And so, you know, if they can get a grade by doing something in Chat GPT, why wouldn't they, right? But it's the possibilities that are there that are so exciting. How can I help you?
I really enjoyed the lecture today. I thought it was really good. And I was reading a meme the other day about a student that used to cheat in college. He would get like an essay that was written in, I don't know, English, and then he would translate it to Hindi, and then translate it to French, and then translate it to Portuguese, and then back from Portuguese back to English, and it will be completely different and still get good grade for it. You know, so the students will always find a way to cheat regardless. But I think that Chat GPT will help teachers, like was mentioned before, with resources that we can implement for students to learn at their own level.
To me, it goes back to that first principle of absolute respect for the individual and where they are. When kids think that success is determined by how they do according to what you've said they should be doing, then they're, you know, it's basic economics. They're going to try and give the least to get the most, right? I do not blame them for that. That's the way the system is set up. But when they start to get the idea that, you know what, Mr. Welch really only cares about my learning German or my learning Spanish. And so why would I cheat because it's only cheating me? Cheating yourself doesn't make any sense in the old paradigm. Kids, you know, kids see through that. Yeah, I may be cheating myself, but I still got an A in the course, right? But in this different perspective of this relationship between you and your language learners. If they know that, hey, you can make as many mistakes as you want. That's part of the learning process. You're not going to be dinged for that. I'm only going to be judging you, assessing you on your successes, not on your failures. Then it's like, why would I write an essay to cheat in Chat GPT and turn it in to Dr. Branson in my German course? It wouldn't make any sense. And
Right.
we also want them to be lifelong learners, right? And yet we never give them any chance to learn independently, to be responsible for their own learning. We're always telling them what to do and when to do it. Sorry, I get excited.
No, that's correct. I also agree on those topics. I have seen a lot of change in my school since we changed from topics to performance-based. So I'm talking in Spanish all the time, and there's a lot less cheating now than with grammar and stuff like that we used to teach them. Oh, this is how you're supposed to do grammar, and these are the rules, blah blah blah. Now that we're more performance-based, speaking, listening, writing, all of that, students are more engaged in the class and they're less worried about their grades. And I continue to tell my students that, hey, as long as you're progressing, I don't mind. If you don't get it this unit, but you polish up your study skills, you try to learn, you try to come and see me after school or whatever, as long as you're showing me that you're trying to be motivated and you do better on the next unit, you're gonna get the credit for the first unit because you have shown your proficiency on the second unit, even though you might not have done on the first unit. So I always try to do that. And I have seen a lot of growth on my students, and they're less likely to use Google Translate on their assignments or on their things that they're working. I am also working with a pair. My students, most of the days, are working with a partner, and language is for communication with somebody else. So I'm like, use your partner, you and your partner can work with language all the time. And that when we have a new student that is transferred from a different school, the number one thing that I hear is like, we don't use Google right here. Like the student starts to Google something like, oh, we don't use Google. You can ask us, we can help you, So that's really been a really awesome change for us. So I really like all the things that you showed us today and the topics.
Well, it's almost the top of the hour. I'm going to take my background off for a minute and let you see Duke, who has been patient about as long as he can. I'll show you him. Shoot, now I can't even remember how to do that. But anyway, I hope that you've at least gotten an idea of what these three concepts are. The degree to which you want to use them is entirely up to you. Yeah, so yeah, here's Duke. He's getting a little impatient with me. Just a minute, Duke. It's almost time. Anyway, I really have enjoyed the time. Let me help you. I'm very happy to. You just have to drop me an email. Crystal will reaffirm that I'm happy to help you on an individual basis, or if a group, or if you want me to talk with one of your administrators or a team in your department or something, just let me know. Special place in my heart for Nebraska and Nebraska teachers.
Thank you so much for this great conversation. I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm ready to help. If any of you want to know more about any of the topics or want any support, on school level, I can help to communicate. And school district level, yeah, I can help as well to communicate. And also, we are trying hard to, put the competency-based credit into place. So anything I can do, let me know. Thank you. Oh, Tom, some teachers are asking for the the slides, I think. Oh, no. Oh, I read it wrong. It's enjoy your presentation. Yeah. Everything is, yeah, all the links. If you need all the links, it's in the chat and I will send a copy to everybody. I mean, the links.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Bye-bye. And especially good to see you, Pat.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Was that
Yay.
okay?
Yeah, it is great. I am sorry, I messed up so much.
Oh, no.
It's my fault.
Just so many things to keep track of, especially when I'm trying to show so many different things. But I hope it was interactive enough for people. I mean, they seem to stay in, so.
Yeah, I think so. They enjoyed it. And also it's a snow day and now it's the road is getting nasty. I think some of the teachers are on their way back home. That's why.
Yeah. Well, you go ahead, have a good rest of your day. I'll go take care of Duke.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
See you
Bye-bye.
tomorrow. Bye.
Okay.